there was a phone number, and you could call that phone number. And there was a recording there where he talked about himself. He talked about his boys. He talked about things that he liked, and he talked about the kind of woman that he wanted to meet. And as I listened, I thought, oh my goodness, he's describing me. And so I was a little scared, but I'm 42 years old, and I too wanted to meet a friend. So you could either hang up after you heard the message, or you could wait till the tone, and then you could leave a message. So I did. I left a message. I left my phone number. I talked a little bit about myself, and left my phone number, and he called me. We made a blind date. Oh boy, 42 going on a blind date. Yeah, I was a nervous wreck. I thought, I'm getting ready and I'm thinking, I cannot do this. I just can't do this. I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm not going on a blind date. I'm just not going to do it. So I go to the phone to cancel the date. And I'm dialing. Yes, dialing the number to cancel the date, and I realized he's supposed to be at my house in 10 minutes, and he lived 40 minutes away, and it's like, well, I can't cancel this thing because he should be here in 10 minutes. So I'm so nervous, I can't even look out the window. So my daughter is 16, and she's watching out the window for me, and then all of a sudden she says, oh, Mom,
before I continue the story, I'm telling you guys, I'm not recommending this strategy to go about. Back in those days, that was considered an acceptable means of communication. It would be kind of like a predecessor of what we all know as eharmony.com. They used to do it through newspaper ads back in those days. So anyway, I hear this story. Because after the fact, I pull up to the house. And by the way, she lived in Trivoli, right between Hannah City and Farmington. Trivoli is a town of less than 200 people. Now, how in the world would we ever met? I had no reason in the world to ever go to Trivoli. What's in Trivoli? And so it came. I pull up to her driveway in Trivoli, Illinois, and I'm walking up to the door. And I hear this after the fact because Jody, Terry's only daughter, is 16 years old, and she is looking out the window, and Terry is hiding in the hall. And Terry is hollering down the hallway, what does he look like? What does he look like? And Jody says, oh, Mom, he's got a really hot car.
I said, I don't care what that car looks like. She said, oh yeah, Mom, he looks okay too. But boy, he's got a really hot car. So, no, I'm not done. I go down the steps to this little rental home that I'm in, and I go down the steps, and he's standing at the bottom of the steps, and I shake his hand. I say, you must be Terry. Oh, you must be Terry. And I said, I'd like you to meet my daughter. So I turn around, and I go back in the house, and down the hallway into the living room where my daughter is, and I turn around to introduce him, and he's not there. I'm like, well, where is he? So I go back down the hallway and back outside. He's standing at the bottom of the steps outside. Yep. I did not invite him into my home, so he didn't just barge in. It's a point for him already. I was so impressed that he didn't just barge in. So we go on our date. We went out to eat, of course, on your first date, spaghetti. Yeah, don't ever do that. It's just, how do you eat spaghetti neatly, So we're sitting in this booth, and we eat our spaghetti, and it was delicious. And so we get done eating, and they clear our plates, and he kind of turns sideways in the booth and scoots up against the wall, puts his feet up on the seat. I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. So here we're sitting on the two sides of the booth and sitting there talking, and I found myself just really opening up to him. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm letting down my wall. I'm telling him. I'm just talking so freely to this guy I just met. I remember one of the things that we talked about, I told him I couldn't wait to be a grandma. I thought, what? What did I say on our first date? I told this guy I wanted to be a grandma. Okay, so all of a sudden I noticed that there's a guy out here mopping the floor. I thought, well, how rude to be mopping the floor when there's people in here. And I looked around and there wasn't anybody else in there. They had closed. They closed the restaurant. The owner's standing up against the wall like this. The guy's mopping the floor. We're like, oh, we're sorry. So we leave and we're driving around and just driving around. I think he's lost because he doesn't take me home. And I said, are you lost? And he said, no, I just want to talk to someone. I don't want to take you home yet. So we drove around and talked, and we got home, and it was after midnight. And I walked. We shook hands goodbye, and he said, "Let's think about tonight and think about if we want to see each other again." And I'm hanging on to his hand, and I'm thinking, I can't let go of his hand unless I know I'm going to see him again. And then I thought, well, what am I thinking? What am I doing here? That I'm letting down my wall. But I really enjoyed the evening. And so I go in the house and I'm just all happy. And my daughter goes, Mother, where have you been? She goes, do you know what time it is? You meet with this man, I don't even know his name. I don't know, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, well, let's remember this, daughter. So it was a wonderful turnaround. So did you want to add anything to this?
So when we share these testimonies of how we met, and after and share our salvation testimony, and the women come to Terry and they tell her, how did you survive? How did you survive those years? And they find out, that Terry wasn't in the picture. Well, it's interesting because many times the men come to me, and their question to me is, what kind of a car was it? It was a Nissan Maxima. It was a high-performance, 5-speed, fire engine red. That's what kind of car it was.
Yeah, it was a single-guy car. We got rid of it right after we got married.
So I wanted Terry, during our dating time, I wanted Terry to come to church with me over at Pekin Bible. And I invited her over to church, and something interesting happened that I never expected. The pastor, some of you might remember, Bruce Main was the pastor over at Pekin Bible Church in those days. I know your pastor would remember him. And he's the one that led me to the Lord. But anyway, he was teaching a men's Sunday school class, and that's where I was. And his wife, Trish, she was teaching a women's Sunday school class. And I invited Terry to go to the pastor's wife's class. I thought she would enjoy it, and she did. And it wasn't long after that Pastor Main and his wife were called to another work in northern Illinois. And what happened, which I had no idea this was going to happen, it was all part of the Lord's plan. What happened was that Terry ended up taking over the women's Sunday school class that the pastor's wife had taught. And then what happened is just something I'll never forget. That class exploded. All these women were coming to Terry because alcohol in the home, abusive husband, divorced mom, single mom, husband who has no interest in church whatsoever, unsaved husband, smoke in the home, every single thing that you could think of in a really disturbing, rough marriage. And these women were coming to Terry for counseling, and that class grew. It was a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, because I have walked in all their shoes, because I've been through the things that they were going through, and so it was wonderful. I love that class so much. I love teaching those women. I love being able to counsel with them and to encourage them and to tell them, God has a plan. God has a plan. Even when you think your life has come to an end. When I was going through my divorce, I remember thinking, I can't see the end of the tunnel. I I can't see what tomorrow's going to bring me. I don't know what's ahead of me, but I know I'm in God's hands and that He has me and that He's in control. And so wherever I go, He is leading me. And I had no idea that God would bless me with a wonderful Christian husband, which is what I prayed for, and that He would allow us to be missionaries. And so, God can take a crisis in your life, the worst time I ever went through in my life, and God has turned it around, and I have more joy now than I've ever had. And we just celebrated 20 years of marriage.
So why don't we share this with you? I'll continue the story in a minute, but why don't we share this with you? Because we know some of you have been through it. We don't even have to ask. We know some of you have been through it. Yeah. And we know that some of your kids have been through it. That's just the world we live in. But we want to encourage you with a very familiar verse out of God's Word. Romans 8:28 says this, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. Both of us thought it was the end of the world, I'm not kidding. I laid on the floor in my home before I met her, and a box of Kleenex was not enough. I had to have a bath towel as a bawling every single night. And God turned all that around. And then, so we met in April 1993, and we were engaged in May of 1993. I mean, you reach a point in your life where you just know. I mean, you can't explain it, you just know. And then we were married in October of 1993. As Terry said, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary. So then what happened? 2 years later, in 1995, two missionaries came to Pekin Bible Church, and they invited the congregation to pray about the possibility of going on something they called a short-term missions trip. And we felt our hearts being tugged, and we signed up to work under these other missionaries. And our first missions trip was to the country of Haiti. And when we got there, we just went to our room and just bawled. We just bawled at what we saw down there. And our hearts were broken forever. That's where it all began. That's where the first step into ministry began, was in Haiti. And we were invited back. And we ended up serving in Haiti and Jamaica for several years, working under these other missionaries. Whatever they needed, we signed up. And then the day came where they felt called to go to India. And they left the ministry of that part of the world and went over to India. And then our mission agency asked Terry and I if we would take over either the country of Haiti or Jamaica, doing what it is that we do today. And I said no to both. I didn't think that's what God was calling us. But we put in an application to be considered as full-time missionaries. We just didn't know what part of the world that we were going to go to. So then, Pastor Newhart, who's our director, he called and he invited us to go with them. Some pastors were going down to the country of Grenada. We didn't even know where it was either. And on a survey trip, they were going down to meet the national church planners that had already been approved. And they wondered if Terry and I would go with them. And the pastor said, let's just see, maybe. And so we agreed to go. So I'm not making any promises, Pastor Newhart, but we agreed to go. And that was May of 2001. And before that week was over with, that's when Terry and I surrendered. We surrendered to God. We surrendered to International Gospel Mission, our mission agency. We surrendered to the country of Grenada. Yeah, this is where we'll serve. So Terry and I came back, and we had to be interviewed by our mission board because a lot of people wonder, and here's another thing we want to encourage you. Sometimes people that have been through a divorce, sometimes they get labeled, at least in their own mind, they get labeled as a second-class citizen that they can't serve the Lord. And that is so untrue. And there are so many things that you can do. See, I'm not a pastor. I never have been, and I never will be. But we we had to go through this, we had to go to before the board and share our testimonies. And to this day, I remember it like it was yesterday because it was in the basement of the church, the board meeting. And Terry and I walked down the steps, and I'm looking, and there's these 12 white-haired men sitting around this table. And it was like going before the 12 apostles themselves. I'm not kidding. And sweat beads coming down, you know. And I want you all to know that the Spirit of the Lord was in that meeting. We shared our salvation testimonies, and we were asked 2 questions, and they unanimously voted because I'm not a pastor and because I'm not a deacon. And those are the 2 things that I, as a divorced person, cannot do, but anything else. And they approved us to, this is an independent fundamental Baptist mission agency, and these board members are independent fundamental Baptist preachers, plus an attorney. And they voted to give us a chance. And that was in 2001. And we've been serving the Lord ever since. It's been over 12 years now that we've been serving in the country of Grenada. And so far, we want to give the Lord all the praise and glory and honor for it. Because so far, the Lord, most of you know that we now lead the teams. Instead of being on the team, we lead the teams. And the Lord has allowed Terry and I to do this 51 different times. 51 different groups the Lord has allowed Terry and I to lead into the country of Grenada, doing vacation Bible schools and evangelistic meetings for the National Church Planners. The youngest one that's come down so far has been 8 years old, and on the other end, 76 years old. So far, that's been the range, but sandwiched in between have been people from all walks of life, and hundreds upon hundreds of teenagers have come down. And this is something that we really want you guys to pray about hard, the possibility of you actually being on one of these teams. Lord willing, we lead team number 52 in just a few weeks. We leave January 10th, take a group down there. And we do need help for the summer of 2014 that we're short-handed on. All the pastors want Vacation Bible School. And we can only do the ones that God raises up the people for. And right now we've got about enough to do maybe 3 Vacation Bible Schools, and the 2 of the other pastors want it as well. We just have to raise more people, more hands and eyes to work with these kids. But they all speak English. And so before you leave today, please make sure, if you don't already have one, get one of these blue prayer cards off the table. And if you don't already have one, get one of these 8x10 sheets. This is an outline of all the mission trips available to you guys. They're all outlined, and they're actually, it's a 4-year outline if it doesn't work for you for this come out in the summer. But it's what we do, and we love it. And we share just a few prayer requests with you. And we really want you to continue praying for Mark. Some of you remember through the prayer letters that my 35-year-old son had a stroke last year, and last year in February. He's single, he's never been married, but his brain was swelling so bad after this stroke that they had to remove part of his brain to save his life. And we've got him in a little tiny rental home in Pekin with a personal assistant, but he really needs a lot of prayer. Mark's interest, it's really disturbing to me because his interest in anything whatsoever has vanished. He doesn't even want to come outside anymore. But when we first got him back, it was like he had a whole new lease on life. But the simple things like going out for breakfast, going to one of the grandkids' ball games at Shade Park over there, going to a movie. I mean, at a drop of a hat, he was ready to do anything. And now, I can't get him to do anything at all. And he's going through a major depression for some reason. And just appreciate your prayers for Mark. I'm doing fine. Some of you remember that 3 weeks before Mark had his stroke, I had heart surgery over at St. Francis Hospital and discovered this procedure called the Da Vinci robotic procedure. And I actually had heart surgery without my sternum being broken. They have this technology. It's fascinating. Go right through your side, right through your rib cage, and the surgeon's not even looking at you. He's looking in this console, almost like a video game. He's operating this robot. It's incredible. And 10 days after I got out of the hospital, I was driving again. And so it's doing fine. And and a blessing that I want to share with you about that. Terry and I filled out an application over at St. Francis Hospital for financial aid. And we had to turn in all of our paperwork, and, you know, we're missionaries, and there's a foundation that, you know, takes a look at all this stuff. You know, we filled in an application, we got a letter in the mail that said, you're 100% approved for anything you need, and for 12 months, okay? So I thought, boy, that's great, thank you, Lord. But then the bills started to come in, and, well, the bills, you know how they are when you have a major surgery. And I'm not kidding, just one of those bills alone was $250,000. And I called the hospital in panic, and they said, don't worry about it, the whole thing's been paid. It is not written off, it is paid by that foundation. All those, 100%, we owe zero on that heart surgery. Thank you, Lord. And we also want to, you know, I don't like talking about finances, but there's something else we really want you to pray about. Just in 2 months' time, we lost support from 5 different churches in America. And the reason for that is that they are going through difficult financial hard times, and they're dropping or lowering their missionary support. And we do need pray that the Lord would raise up new churches and new families that He would want to partner with the ministry. And one area, another area that we need help on, many of you know this just by the prayer letter, when Terry and I are here in the States, we live a good portion of our life in our van, and we live out of a suitcase. And we just go from state to state and share our hearts just like we're doing right now, and inviting people to come with us on these mission trips. And we need help with maintenance on our van, just because of the amount of time. The past 2 vans that we've driven, past two ministry vehicles, we pushed them to a combined total of over 600,000 miles here in America. So we're in the shop a lot, and we just push them until they're dead. And that's what happened. But anyway, we don't want to be a burden to any of you guys, but if anybody would be able to help us with van expenses, that's what that jar is out there on the table. So we want you. Go ahead, you have something?
I have to tell about our last van. It was the one that we drove here the last time we were here. We had 360,000 miles. And we had said we're going to quit driving this van. You know, we get to 300,000, we're going to quit. But somebody we know and love didn't want to quit driving that van because he said it worked fine. It was a Honda. So it was still going and still going, and I'm a nervous wreck because I'm ready to set this van aside and donate it to somebody. We were thinking about Peoria Rescue Mission to use on their farm, and I don't want to drive a van with 360,000 miles on it. You know, God knows the desires of your heart, and He works things out, not always in a way that you would choose, but in June, Carrie had gone to pick up one of our grandsons, and as he's coming over the Pekin Bridge, somebody ran a red light, ran into the side of the van and pulled it out. Nobody was hurt. Carrie had scrapes on his arms because of the airbags went off, but that van was totaled, and so I'm like, I hated it that he went through that accident. It scared me so much, but we're not driving that van anymore.
It was a strange feeling when I called her and I said, I just got in a wreck and the van's totaled up, and on the other end of the phone, yes! Oh, yeah! So that van is history. Anyway, we're going to close this out. We got a really great 4-minute DVD that we're going to close this out with. And Terry's going to narrate what you're looking at. We'll go ahead and start that now.
This is does it come off of here?
Maybe. Let's go ahead.
Oh, there it is. Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. We're going to take you on a trip to Grenada, where it's hot and sunny. Can you turn this sound go down just a little tiny bit? So coloring, lots of coloring in Grenada. Coloring is important worldwide. You see they're on the floor coloring because there's no tables and chairs in this building that they use next to the church. Every head bowed, every eye closed, the plan of salvation is given at every lesson time. And here they are in that building, learning memory verse with actions. Ring around the rosy in this little tiny yard next to the church with the little kids. Or fishy, fishy in the sea, we all fall down with a 1, 2, 3. So the bigger kids we take down by the beach. There's this huge field where the older kids can do their names. Clear over here on the left, you see the teenage girl giving the lesson. Oh, these kids, aren't they beautiful? Look at those faces, they're so adorable. I don't know what this is, but isn't he cute? He is just so cute. That's his smile. This is Leah, Bible in her hand, leading those two kids to Jesus. You can barely see Diane, clear underneath all those hugs. This is the biggest church we work with, 250 kids that week for VBS. Oh yeah, we're back to coloring. Do lots of coloring. This is Janae, a pastor's daughter, with her plastic ring on, all ready for church. And back in that big field, we have teenagers that come to Vacation Bible School, and they love soccer. We play a lot of soccer. So there they are, 250 kids. Let's count them. Bubbles. Oh, they love bubbles. If you come to Grenada, you have to bring bubbles. They didn't even know what they were before we started bringing them. They've never seen them before. We have 2 team members here on that porch with their Bibles in their hands, leading these kids to Jesus. And sunglasses. They love sunglasses. Again, you got to bring sunglasses to Grenada. They love them. You probably give away your own sunglasses. Lesson that week was on the 6 days of creation, and then God rested. This is one of the tiny rooms that we sometimes use for memory verse. Okay, the team in the blue shirt, they were from Goshen, Indiana that week. And this pastor is from Pennsylvania, leading that teenager to Jesus. These are our pastors, Pastor Milton Williams, his wife Evelyn, and 2 of their grandchildren. Pastor Casimir Thomas and his wife Shennaron, and 3 of their children. And the next picture is their church. It's 16 feet wide, 20 feet long. We had 135 kids in there for VBS. We just stack them up. Pastor Garnett Samuels and his wife Dorothy, and their 2 adult children. Pastor Kennedy Caliste and his beautiful wife Desalyn, who is now with Jesus. Pastor Andy Murray and his wife Prudence and their 2 daughters, Anika and Amelia. This is Sister Beulah Roberts. Her husband, Pastor Stanley Roberts, is the one that's been missing at sea. And this is Pastor Matthew Jeremiah and his wife Janelle. They have taken over Pastor Roberts' church and their 2 kids. Thank you for allowing us to give you a little glimpse of Grenada, a little picture of our pastors and the people that we love. But, firsthand is so much better, so please come join us.